Thank you, Simon. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. This meeting is being conducted virtually via video conferencing in lieu of meeting in the council chamber at Summit City Hall, Summit, New Jersey. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page. In addition, members of the public can view and participate in the meeting by following the link provided on the agenda. Members of the public may also submit written comments and questions to the zoning board secretary in advance of the meetings to be read aloud during the meeting. Such written comments shall not be considered as testimonial and shall not be considered by the board in its determination of any application. Individuals wishing to provide testimony as to any application must participate virtually with both audio and video enabled. Andy Ball is the zoning board's attorney. He will advise board members on matters of law and is the key interface with an applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. Chris Nicola is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with applicants on getting their applications together, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola also does not vote on the application. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You'll be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, will you please call the roll of the members?
Sure. Chairman Spur,
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Here.
Mr. Yuko.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Steiner,
Here.
Mr. Mullen is excused, Ms. Schwartzstein is excused, Mr. Malay,
Here.
Mr. Liketts,
Here.
Ms. Toth,
Here.
and Ms. Sager.
Here.
All right, you have a quorum, you can proceed.
Excellent. We generally hear the cases in the order they are listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, but we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard within that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals are done with their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about this case. That opportunity comes at the end of the hearing. Before you ask your questions, we need to know who you are and where you live. It is important that our court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. Please state your name before speaking or asking a question, and please do not talk over each other. This is even more important under the current circumstances. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak, and at that time, you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed and we go into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If the case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry your case to another date and it will not be decided tonight. Krista Anderson, the city's zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as it will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. When I call your name, please tell me how many witnesses you have and whether you think you can complete your case within 30 minutes. First on the agenda is Colleen Echeveste and Hector Ruiz. My apologies there.
No worries. Good evening. This is Hector Ruiz. No witnesses. Thank you.
All right. Second on the agenda is Alex Chittum for 9 Fay Place.
Hi, yes, we have one witness, our engineer.
Okay, thank you. And then third, 3 Crestacre Court, Robert Pawlowski and Tremaine Stanley.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Samantha Alfonso of
Yes,
Dempsey
ma'am.
Dempsey and Sheehan on behalf of the applicants.
Are there any witnesses this evening for
No.
that case?
Yes, thank you. We have two witnesses, the engineer, Andrew Clark, and the architect, Jordan Rosenberg, and we will have Bob Pawlowski and Tremaine Stanley here as well.
Okay, all right. Let's begin the evening at 118 Pine Grove Avenue. Mr. Ruiz, if you'll start us off. Andy, we'll just need to swear Mr. Ruiz in to begin.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Hector D. Ruiz, R-U-I-Z.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ruiz, if you'll start us off here, tell us a bit about the application and we'll go from there.
Sure. As outlined in the principal point statement, we are residents of 118 Pine Grove Avenue, and we're looking to do a slight expansion of the existing deck. In the materials, we have several photographs. So if I direct your attention to Exhibit 1, to the principal point statement, that sort of gives you the view of the current deck, which is, kind of small. And so we are basically looking to expand it by approximately 8 feet to allow for outdoor dining and for our family to enjoy it a little more. Moving on to Exhibit 2, you'll see that underneath the deck, there's a bit of a slope. And one of the issues is whether we can, do a patio versus expanding the deck. And we're including Exhibit 2 to show what's underneath the current deck. That, creating a uniform patio is going to be a little difficult because of what's under the deck. And so, it would be easier, to expand the current deck out by 8 feet. And so that is what you see at Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3, sort of what's underneath the current deck that shows a bit of a slope. Material under there that wouldn't really permit us to create a uniform patio, remove the deck and create a patio. Just moving on to Exhibit 4, which is sort of the drawing of what we're looking to do for the new deck. And basically it's just to expand what we currently have, by adding 8 feet to make it 8 feet wider, and go down to where the landing, sort of the current landing exists. And we wouldn't go any further than the current wood landing in the photographs. The other comment I would make is that sort of creating a patio versus expanding the existing deck would be a bit of an undue hardship for the reasons I explained, that it would be difficult to sort of create one uniform patio. It would sort of be 2 levels if we had to sort of the existing deck and then expand the patio. So ideally we would be able to just expand the existing deck. In terms of the expansion, we think it's reasonable. We would just be adding essentially 8 feet to the deck. In terms of any undue impact or undue harm to our neighbors, as we mentioned in the principal point statement, we have trees that basically surround the back of our yard. And I'm trying to locate photographs that might be able to depict that. They may have been included in the exhibits, if you just bear with me a moment. So if you look at Exhibit 6, that sort of gives you an idea of the trees. So we basically have trees that border the
Mr. Ruiz, would you just mind holding just for a quick second? I just want to make sure, does the board all see these pictures? They were included in the packet. Everyone's okay? Okay, because I understand, Mr. Ruiz, you don't have any witnesses, so I just want to make sure that, this is the extent of the testimony we'll be receiving. So if anyone needs to see these pulled up on the screen, we certainly can do it.
We should probably make sure that we know who took them, when they were taken, et cetera, all that
Do you mind pulling them up,
background
Chris, just so
information.
Yeah, I'll pull them up.
Sorry, Mr. Ruiz, I just want to make sure that we'll get through this one and done, right? So,
Yeah, not a problem. and I apologize, I'm doing this pro se. So
No, we appreciate you putting on a tie after shoveling snow probably all day. So
I did both.
Just hang with
I
us
think
for a minute.
there was a question. Mr. Steiner, you had a question, I believe?
Yeah, when were these pictures taken? Who took them? That's for the
Sure.
record.
Sure, absolutely. The pictures were taken by me, and they were taken around the time that I submitted the application. So in or around, let's see, November of 2020. And all the photographs were taken by me.
I think, Chris, if you just jump ahead to the photographs, you did a nice job, Mr. Ruiz, in capturing these photos, and it's something we encourage applicants to include. It helps certainly the board understand the potential impact of these applications. So thank you for doing that.
Sure. And does it make sense for me to go back now that the photos are up, so kind of walk you through them quickly, or?
Yeah, if you like to, I think it's most helpful, and then we can address any of the questions or concerns included in the staff reports.
Absolutely, not a problem. And I'll be quick. I understand there's time limitations. So Exhibit 1 is sort of the existing deck. So you'll see, we have a relatively small table and 4 chairs, and that's kind of where it is now. And basically what we would like to do is sort of make it wider by 8 feet. It's currently about 8 feet wide right now, and we propose to double it. Moving on to Exhibit 2. Exhibit 2 is what's underneath the current deck. And so this is one of the reasons why we are not sort of removing the deck altogether and creating one patio, because we wouldn't be able to create a patio basically underneath where the deck is. It's a slope and it's some sort of HVAC equipment there. So it would be sort of difficult to get rid of all that, level out the ground, and create one level patio. Moving on to Exhibit 3 is sort of a front view of that same sort of photo that I showed you, a bit of a slope there and some sort of HVAC equipment. So that is, again, the reason why we prefer to just extend the existing deck rather than seek a variance and create one level patio. Moving on to Exhibit 4, I think those are, and I'll just wait. It's the next, if you don't mind, the next page. Yep. That's what we're proposing to do. If you scroll up a little bit further up, I'm sorry, down, apologies. A little further. Yep. A little more. So you'll see that that's sort of what we're looking to do in terms of expanding the deck. And essentially keeping the footprint that we have. So basically most of the work is going to go into sort of doubling where the deck space is, that you see in Exhibit 1. And then if you don't mind, I'll just walk through. Exhibit 5 is just sort of a view from when you're standing on the deck looking down. It's sort of, that's the bottom of the landing. So the proposed extension of the deck would go no further than to that bottom of the existing landing that's there. And then I will move to Exhibit 6, if you don't mind. And this is where sort of I left off a little earlier. So you'll see that's a view from the stairs, or that's a view from the sort of window looking out to the back. And you'll see that there's a line of trees that basically surround our backyard. So we would not, we are facing backyards on both our right, our left, and directly back. And in addition to that, we have high trees that are there. So we would, folks wouldn't be able to see us and we wouldn't be able to see them. So it wouldn't be any interference with anybody's yard or any views. And we also don't have direct views to anybody's homes. It's just, we see backyards to our right, to our left, and directly behind us. And an exhibit, if you don't mind moving to Exhibit 7, is just to highlight that we would not be going, that's sort of the side view of the existing deck. We wouldn't be going any higher than that. We're going to keep the same height. Essentially, as I mentioned earlier, it's really just to expand it a little bit, to have more space to entertain. And then that's the extent of the photos. And then the only other thing I would add, as we mentioned in the principal point statement, we obviously need 2 variances, a rear yard setback, as mentioned in our submissions, and then a building coverage variance as well. And in addition to that, I think, I don't need to read what we said in the principal point statements, but we think that the addition of the deck would not interfere with any of our neighbors. We think that it's something that will enhance the usefulness of the house. Obviously, in this age of COVID, it's the reason is also to sort of create more outside living space where we can spend time with our neighbors. We have a 5-year-old daughter, her friends from CPC and surrounding areas. We think that the extension is very modest for the site. We also think that it'll be an improvement. We intend to replace the existing wood planks with high quality Trex composite materials, which will look good over time. And so we think overall it will be an improvement to the home as well. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
First, maybe Mr. Dower, do you have anything about this application?
The only comments that we had were it's a very modest addition. So the comments, I think there was a note somewhere maybe in the application about a shed being removed. I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, absolutely. That, and thank you for asking. Correct. There is no shed on the property. The shed that's reflected and depicted on the survey was not there before we moved in. So to answer the question, there is no shed. There's no longer a shed on the property.
And as far as trees being removed, are there any trees proposed to be removed?
Absolutely not.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dower. Any questions from members of the board? Mr. Steiner?
Krista had some issues on hers relative to the numbers.
I saw that as well. Let me try to pull that up here. That was in the online comments we received. Hold on. That was, I think, just a question about the calculations, if I remember correctly. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the staff comments here. Under the first note, Joe, you may be referring to the applicant should confirm that the existing stairs will remain unchanged. Is that part of it? You need to come off mute if you'd like to say something, Joe. Still not on off mute.
Am unmuted.
There you go.
I thought I was unmuted because of the. Oh, he's sharing this thing now. So, okay. So you can all read it. It's basically that there's it's a rather big building coverage number between 26 and 20. And also that the numbers do not agree with the dimensions on the property survey. So we have to straighten that out somehow.
So let's start with the first part here. Can you confirm, Mr. Ruiz, that the stairs will remain unchanged?
Right. So the stairs will remain unchanged. Well, other than we're going to change the material. So if we go to composite, we would be going from what's existing now, which is wood, to composite. And then in terms of unchanged, I would say the width is not going to change. But I would note that if you go back to Exhibit 4, the drawings that we included, sort of the top of the stairs, we are proposing so that sort of there's a sort of 4-foot landing right now when you go from the top of the stairs to the bottom. The top of the stairs we would add 2 feet for safety reasons, but in terms of the dimensions, we wouldn't change the width. And then it would be in terms of the length would be what's depicted in our drawings at Exhibit 4.
And then to the heart of Joe's question there about building coverage. So I think maybe where I'm confused as well is in the engineer's report. There's reference here in point 6. The applicant notes in their application that they are proposing to increase the building coverage by 120 square feet from 1,271.9 to 133.7.9. That's a 21 to 22%, where 20% is the maximum. The question I would suppose, though, Joe, right, is where did the 26 come from? Is that, Mr. Ruiz, is that from your calculations within the exhibits?
That would be from the application when we ran the calculations. And again, you know, doing this pro se, but we did our best to try to capture what the increase would be. And those numbers that we calculated can be found in the worksheet the application to zoning board of adjustments, where there's question 3, where they have several calculations. I think that's where we have our calculations.
So I see there in number 3, the 120 additional square feet proposed, and I'm not sure where Krista saw the 26. Did it say 26 here? Correct me if I'm.
It says for building coverage proposed of 26%, where 20% is the maximum permitted.
Right.
It's right
So
out
my
of her
question-
report.
Right. So Joe, my question is, where did Krista get the 26? Because that's not how the engineer's letter reads, or just off.
I think her second sentence may tell us that the proposed increase in building coverage is somewhat unclear, as the homeowner's plans do not agree with the dimensions as scaled off the property survey.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Dower, can you explain that one to us?
When I scaled it off, it looked like the numbers were correct, what I have in our letter. So I'm not really sure where that was coming from.
So what I'll offer to the board, at least here, is, and I hate to depart from Krista's numbers. I'm comfortable considering the building area calculations considered in the application for development, and essentially limiting the increase to those figures, as opposed to, you know, what's been put into question and what I think Krista drew out as a conservative figure. If that makes sense to
I
folks.
think I can just add one thing. However we look at the percentage, it's 120 square foot increase. So I think that's the way to look at it.
Right. So we would write if we were to approve the resolution approving for 120 square feet increase, period. And whatever percentage that is, I have to run the numbers real quick here, but how does that sound, Joe? How do you feel about that?
I'm fine with that. And again, if there's Krista Cola can ask Krista to take a second look before we pass the resolution. And if she has a major objection, she can send it back.
Yeah, that's more than reasonable, Joe. I think we can achieve that. And then I'm sure Chris and me and Krista can have a dialogue about, you know, what the ultimate number is, and we can share that with you guys.
Does that make sense?
Only
Mr.
if you have to.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Ruiz, we just want to be able to, you know, give you a number that fairly reflects what you've presented here today and in the application material, that would allow you, assuming the board is amenable to it, to proceed. So that's why we have this resolution step that all these folks that just got mentioned will reconcile, you know, any discrepancy and seek to approve that.
Understood.
Okay. Andy, that works for you? Okay. I saw a good head nod there.
Yes, it does.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Okay. So I think we can address that point. Any other questions from members of the board? Tom?
Not a question, just one comment. I want to make sure that we all note, and that Mr. Ball notes for the resolution, that Krista is asking that we get an as-built survey from the applicant. I gather because the current survey they enclosed was probably old.
Catch that, Andy?
Yep. And I
Okay.
would just ask Mr. Ruiz, any issue with submitting the as-built survey as requested there?
And I guess just a question again, I'm pro se, what is an as-built survey? Is that something that sort of needs to be formally done, or is that something that, once the, someone could come out and measure, whether it's from the city or we do it and submit it, are there any, what is it and are there any alternatives?
Mr. Chairman, if I can chime in here.
You
So an
may.
as-built would be having your surveyor go out and survey the property to show what improvements have been made and just confirm setbacks and building coverage and lot coverage is what was in your application. So it would be an update of when you had the survey done, when you purchased the property, it would be an update of that survey, but showing all the new improvements.
Okay. Okay, so I think I understand. I guess my only comment, and certainly I defer and respect, obviously the board's recommendation on this. I mean, if that's the only option we have, because obviously it would be a cost to it. But if that's what's required, certainly we'll do what's required.
Okay, I think we'd want to add that as a condition of the approval, just to clean up, any of the ambiguities here. So I would appreciate if you could undertake that step for us.
Understood.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? We're working, Mr. Millay, go for it.
I just wonder what kind of enclosure we have around the deck, between the deck and the ground, because there is some kind of a space, as we see from existing space. I don't know in the future when it's going to be expanded all around. Are they going to have any kind of enclosure to prevent foxes or any other wild animals from hiding there?
Sure, that's a good question. I think what we ideally would like to do is sort of in the vein of what's currently there. And let me see if it's depicted in any of the photos. There's sort of under the current deck, there are these lattices, I believe, like lattice fences that you're actually able to pull off. And we would basically do something very similar. So there would be a lattice fence where we could have storage underneath, but they would be closed.
You can see that kind of in Exhibit 3. Yeah.
Right. If you see, exactly. Thank you very much. Exhibit 3, a little bit to the right, we pulled one off, but you'll see that there is a second one there that's sort of up. It would be something like that you're able to remove and put back on.
Thank you, Mr. Millay. Any other questions from members of the board? No? Excellent. Mr. Ruiz, anything you'd like to say in closing before we move into deliberations? You did a good job as a pro se applicant, so I appreciate your effort.
No other comments. I just thank you very much, A, for reviewing our application and considering our application, and secondly, for convening the meeting tonight. Obviously, we have bad weather, and you're still able to keep the meeting going forward. So I really thank you for your time this evening.
Wonderful. All right. So, Mr. Ball, just to remind us on conditions quickly before we jump into the deliberations.
Certainly. So first is the usual compliance with the conditions noted in the engineer's report. The second condition would be that the building coverage increase would be limited to 120 square feet, and the applicant shall confer with the board regarding the discrepancy noted in the building coverage calculations. And the third and final condition is that the applicant shall submit an as-built survey after the deck is constructed.
Excellent. Okay, who would like to kick off deliberation?
Public input before. I don't know that
Oh,
there
I'm
is
sorry.
any,
Yeah, that's
but
right.
you may want to ask.
I will ask. Thank you for the reminder, Joe. My mind is on the shoveling I got to do after this meeting. Any members of the public that are here for this application? I don't see any frantic hands waving. Okay, but thank you, Joe, for reminding me. I appreciate that. All right, let's jump into deliberations then. Who'd like to start us off for these 120 square feet of decking?
I'll start off with, it's a relatively minor application, a variance request. There's plenty of screening, so there's none of the concerns we sometimes have about expansion of decks.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of screening on site, which we addresses some of the normal concerns we have when there are decks being added or expanded. It seems consistent with the neighborhood. It's something that's not visible from the street, so it's not visible from the street, not visible to the neighbors. Small addition. I have no trouble with the application.
Any further comment from the board?
In order to just follow our former council's request to have put more than one of us on the record, I agree. This is minimal and have no problem with moving and supporting it.
Okay, wonderful. With that, we'll entertain a motion to approve. Anyone?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. Chris?
Sure. Vice Chairwoman No,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Woykins,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Chairman Spur.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Ruiz.
Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. All right. Next up, Alex Chittum, 9 Fay Place. There's Alex. All right. Andy's going to swear you in here to begin, and then we can start your case.
And if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Yep. Alex Chittum. It's Chittim.
Thank you.
And then Mr. Chittum, yep, is your Jen, I assume, Mr. Chittum's wife? Are you planning to testify this evening?
Yes.
I guess.
Okay. So Andy, would you do her the honors too? Sorry.
Yes, indeed. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please also state your name, spell your last name.
It's Jennifer Chittim, and it's Chittim.
Thank you.
Andrew, we have one witness. Should he testify too?
We'll swear him in when you present him.
Great.
So we're going to start, Mr. Chittum. We'll give you the opportunity to, just introduce us to your case. Tell us a little bit about why you're here, what you're seeking.
Great, absolutely. We can be fairly brief here. So we moved into 9 Fay Place in September, and we've loved the house and loved Summit so far. I think the reason we're here today is we have an application for a rear patio that involves a bulk variance and a slight setback variance. And the reason that that we're putting this application in is we don't have any real outdoor gathering space, and obviously in this era of COVID, I think it's something that's become even more important to us. And so we wanted to see if this was possible. So we've gone through the application process. We've had Nick involved, who's helped us with some of our drawings and thinking about the square footage and the drainage and things like that. And hopefully we'll be able to get through any questions today, either from our experience or with Nick's help. But I think, from everything we've gone through so far, we think it's a strong application, but we'll defer to all your judgment and your questions. Let's see. I think most of you have gone through the application, so I won't really, go through all of that again. I think maybe best use of our time is to turn it over to questions. I guess the one thing I will add that I'm not sure was directly on our application is we have added a number of trees to our yard, initially for kind of privacy screens, but I think we've added 12 trees in total. And I think everything else really is in the application.
Apologies, we don't have pictures. We didn't realize that those would be accepted.
That's all right. You'll know for next time, but that's
yes,
okay.
But we do. We did add, as Alex said, trees and have fences around as well. So it is relatively private, and hopefully in the coming years will be even more private as those trees grow. And hopefully we're not killed today by 2 feet of snow on them.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions? I don't know, Mr. Dower, if you have a question for the applicant, or we'll wait for the engineer.
Well, I actually can mention them now. I had a conversation with the city engineer because this is a relatively newly constructed home. So the soils are not really conducive to a dry well. They're clay, and there is absolutely no perk at all. I had a letter from the prior engineer for when the property was built, or when the house was built. And so what I would say is, if we can craft a condition to the resolution that the design of a stormwater system will be subject to review and approval by the city engineer, I think that would be the best way to go from here.
Thanks,
Okay.
thanks, Chris. Yeah, I guess a comment on that. So we're certainly happy to do whatever the recommendation is. We had put the offer in here for a dry well. We've since got the recommendation from our builder that sort of the drainage, kind of goes into kind of along the side and into the front lawn, which has a well that I guess connects. So so we're open to whatever path forward makes the most sense.
Usually as the condition had just been explained there, and Andy will do a wonderful job crafting that to give us some flexibility. It allows you, your engineer, the city's engineer, ample opportunity to explore what's the right fit for your property and the stormwater management issues you may or may not be facing on the property. So we try to provide some latitude there. So we don't oversize it or undersize it. We get it right.
Great.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board for the applicants? Okay, and then let's check, is there any members of the public here for this application? And this would just be an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, and hearing and seeing none. Okay, wonderful. Then we can proceed to your engineer. Where is he? There he is. Hey, Nick. Andy's going to swear you in here.
Right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
My name is Nick Colonna, Collonna.
Thank you. And if you could briefly describe your background, experience, and give 3 boards that you've recently appeared before aside from Summit.
Okay. My experience, I've been a professional engineer since, 2006. I started my engineering background. Basically, I started designing long span bridges in Manhattan, and I moved over to this area to kind of break off on my own. I've been doing residential construction and engineering for the past 6 years, engineering since 2012. Like the construction part started about 6 years ago. So I've been doing a lot of construction projects in Summit, Madison, Chatham. Those are also the boards that I appear in front of, also the Chatham and Madison boards for similar issues too. A lot of times I get called in for the odd lots, if you will, people with corner lots or weird circumstances that are tough to figure out. So they'll bring me in, and we'll try to figure out a best way to make things work for people.
I may have missed it. You're a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey, I assume?
New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania.
Wonderful. We'll accept your credentials. Welcome, and you can begin your testimony.
Sure. So yeah, I was called by the Chitums to. Obviously, we all know they built a pretty new house there, and it kind of pushed the boundaries as far as what was allowed to be put on the lot in the first place. Obviously, to give them the ample space indoors, and we were just barely over the allowable lot impervious coverage for what they're proposing for a reasonable sized patio in the back. I think excessive anyway.
Anybody else hear him?
Because of
Sorry, Nick, hold on. Slow down.
I think the one corner of the patio and then impervious coverage is over. So,
hold on. He'll catch up with us. Sorry,
am I
Michelle.
breaking up?
Yeah. Michelle, can you tell us where we left off?
Obviously giving them ample space indoors, and we were just over the allowable lot impervious coverage for what? It kind of was.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was backing up there. So we were slightly over the impervious lot coverage and over the rear yard setback just by a few feet. So, that's the only reason we had to apply for the variance in the first place, because it was just barely over. The one thing we thought to offset that was to do a dry well, obviously, without doing an actual perk test like they did when they were building the actual house. We used the USGS soil survey, which indicated that at least the top portions of the soil in the area were they had some clay, but there was some silt there too. But obviously, an actual perk test would override, the general USGS survey. So, I'm more than happy to work with the city engineer as far as what they feel is the most reasonable way to deal with the overrun of the rain and drainage.
Wonderful. Anything else you'd like to add?
If there's any questions, I'm happy
Okay.
to.
Mr. Dower, anything else you'd like to quiz the engineer on?
No, I think we've covered everything. Thank you.
Okay. And Andy, what I would add too as a condition, either within what Mr. Dower mentioned before or separate, is for the board to retain drainage jurisdiction for a period of 2 years. And that, Chittham's, is just to allow anyone that is on a surrounding property that might experience overflow from the property from a poorly designed and constructed stormwater management system to come back to the board to seek some kind of redress. But we hope and we anticipate that it'll be installed and planned appropriately, and we'll never need to actually exercise that condition.
Great. Sounds good.
Okay.
We have a toddler boy. We'd like to avoid the mud and the swamp as much as anyone.
Good. All right. That's a good incentive, though. I'm glad that's on the record. So Mr. Dower is good. Any questions from members of the board for the engineer?
If you don't mind, actually, I just wanted to add one thing, very small thing to Nick's testimony. So he had mentioned, I think, us building the house, just a very minor correction to that. So we bought the house after the construction was nearly completed. So obviously, there may be some questions why we're adding this if we didn't think of it in the first place. So everything was complete by the time we built the house, which is why we're asking for the variance.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, I'm not hearing any questions from the board. I'm not certain, are there any members of the public here that has a question for the engineer with regard to the application? Oh, this is an atypically quiet night. I'll take it.
Quick question.
Yes.
On Mr. Dower's questions, number 7, location of AC units or generator,
Yes.
was that included in the calculations?
So I'm not positive if it was included in the calculations. Nick, you said that it would add theoretically 0.1% to the calculation, but did you confirm?
We don't have a generator. It's just AC.
Right. The 2 AC units will be a total of 8 square feet. So, they were essentially negligible, in the overage. Like I said, it affected 0.1% of the impervious coverage. So, there weren't a main focus, but obviously even considering them, it doesn't really, change the main point of what we're trying to accomplish.
Not a problem. I just wanted to just cover it because it said applicant shall provide testimony. So thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
Any other questions from members of the board? All right, hearing and seeing no members of the public for questions. Any members of the public have any comments to make on the application, pro or con? All right, you've been given your chance. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Chittum, if you'd just like to, any closing remarks, it's up to you.
We're new to Summit. We're so happy here, and we're hoping to build a patio and make some more friends once it's a little easier to make friends and be able to have people in our yard with our growing family. So thank you for considering it.
Great. Wonderful. All right. Mr. Ball, will you run us through the conditions?
So we have first, compliance with the conditions noted in the engineer's report. Second is that the applicant shall confer with the city engineer regarding design of an adequate stormwater system. That design shall be subject to the city engineer's review and approval. And finally, the board shall retain drainage jurisdiction for a period of 2 years.
Who would like to kick us off for deliberations? Tom already did the first
I
one.
will. I think it's a modest
Anyone else?
addition. No, I will. Are you frozen, Steve?
Oh, no, I think you're good now. No, go
Okay,
ahead.
cool. It's a modest addition to a beautiful home, and I'm not sure why the builder didn't include it in the first place, but it will definitely add pleasure to your property, and you have enough coverage, and I will definitely approve this application.
And I was rather taken with the argument that, yes, if had the front-facing garage ordinance been changed in time, this would not even be an issue. So there's kind of a sense that the city did it to itself.
Wonderful. All right.
Just one other comment, one other point to just note for the record. It's another patio, which, you worry about screening, but the forester notes that there's sufficient screening on site. So that's a relatively minor application. I'm inclined to support it as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Liz. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? All right, Chris?
Okay, Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Malay.
Yes.
Is that a yeah? I think that was a yeah, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Loiketz?
Yes.
Okay, and let me make sure I didn't miss anybody. Chairman Spur?
Yes.
And Mr. Hill.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Chittums. Enjoy your patio when the snow melts.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
we're wishing we had a
Please
front-facing
try it,
garage
so
and shorter
good
driveway
luck.
too.
Claire, did you vote?
No, and I thought that I was needed to be
All right,
number
thank you,
7.
everyone.
Did we count me, Andy?
Chris?
Yeah, I kind of went out of order. I said you last. If
Okay.
usually I do Steve last, but I'm handwriting them since I had on my sheet today, so went a little out of order.
Well, I'm still yes, if you need me or not.
All right. Count it as unanimous. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chittums.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick.
Would anyone care for a break, or how are we doing?
Power through.
Power through. I like Scott. All right.
It's only 8:19, guys.
I know. Well, I don't want to tire you guys out. You just have to tell David this was not the meeting to miss, right? We're rocking and rolling. So
Michelle, can you handle it?
Yeah, I think so.
thank you, Michelle. All right, moving on to 3 Crest Acre Court. I believe, Tom, you're recused from this application?
Yes, I am. Yep.
All right, go grab a cup of coffee or something. All right, Mr. Pawlowski and Ms. Stanley.
Good
All right.
evening, Mr. Chairman,
Hello.
Oh,
members
that's
of the
right.
board.
Thank you, Ms.
Samantha
Alfonso.
Alfonso. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. If I may, Samantha Alfonso on behalf of the applicants, Bob Pawlowski and Tremaine Stanley. They live at 3 Crest Acre Court. It's block 1101, lot 6. This home is almost a century old Tudor in one of Summit's many charming neighborhoods, the Crest Acre Court neighborhood. The proposal calls for the renovation of the entire home while maintaining the architectural style of the home, consistent with the character and style of the neighborhood. The improvements are designed to provide the type and kind of amenities and aesthetic consistent with the neighborhood and the city of Summit, while preserving that Tudor identity of the home. The renovation will modernize the home's function, flow, energy, and efficiency, while enhancing that formal front of the home with an enlarged living room and dining room. And at the back of the home, creating an open kitchen, breakfast area, great room, and home office. If I may share my screen,
You may.
Mr. Nicola, thank you. Chris, how would you like to mark the exhibits? I know this has been entered.
We should call this A1.
Thank you. A1 shows a rendering of the proposed renovations. The proposal will also eliminate existing nonconformities, including the elimination of a non-permitted front-facing attached garage. The replacement will be a conforming detached garage. The footprint of the attached garage will be adapted to a proposed two-story addition that may be seen on A1 here. As mentioned, this is designed to preserve as much as possible that architecturally significant front exterior and incorporating it into the Tudor revival. Most of the addition is positioned in the rear of the property behind the existing home and set back from the side lot line approximately 25 feet. The property slopes from the front, from Crestacre up to the home, and then again up to the rear property line. For this application, the proposal requires variance relief in the form of for a D variance for floor area ratio for 26.2%, where 25% is permitted. The two other variants requested are a C2 variance for building coverage. We're requesting 16.35% building coverage, where 14% maximum is permitted. This is really attributable to that detached garage, as Krista mentions in her report. That detached garage is proposed at about 564 square feet, replacing the garage, the front-facing attached garage of 507.7 feet. The applicant also requires disturbance of approximately 1,800 square feet of regulated steep slopes. The grading plan proposed will assure the improvement of those areas of steep slopes consistent with the purposes of the steep slope ordinance. The applicants reviewed the administrative comments of the board's professionals and agencies, and in particular, they understand that a landscape plan has been requested. The applicant looks forward to having a landscape plan prepared for review and approval by the city forester, John Linson. And we request that that condition of approval be considered. As there was an opportunity to speak with John Linson regarding this, and it's understood that he seems favorable to the removal of the two trees indicated by him, the Norway maple and the white pine, towards the rear of the property where the detached garage would potentially and likely impact the root systems there. The main variance for floor area ratio, as mentioned, is 0.2%, where 25% is permitted. A great deal of this is attributable to a portion of the attic that is 7 feet height. The master bedroom is proposed to have a cathedral ceiling using a portion of that attic height to provide that two-story type of master bedroom, even though it is indeed on the second floor. With regard to the garage, I do want to mention that there is a reservation of rights area that prevents the functional relocation of the garage. The reason why that is proposed in the location that it is precisely that reason, to allow it to provide for function, but also not impact that area that is reserved to the neighboring property. And Mr. Clark can explain that in further detail. If I may, we propose the benefits to be gained by this proposal greatly outweigh any detriment in improving this property as a single family home for the applicants, consistent with the modern amenities and character of this neighborhood. And with that, if I may ask if the board has any questions of me at this time.
Questions from members of the board for Ms. Alfonso, understanding that we'll hear from an engineer and an architect, if I'm correct. All right, good job, Ms. Alfonso. Who should we hear from first?
Thank you. If I may ask Bob Pulowski, and I believe his wife is with him, if they could be sworn in to give testimony, please.
Certainly, and we'll swear you in jointly. If you could each raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
And please each state your name, spell your last name.
Tremaine Stanley, Stanley.
Bob Pulowski, Pawlowski.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I understand Bob is going to do the bulk of the testifying, but I wanted you both to be sworn in just in case you want to add something. Thank you. If you can, please confirm that you are the owners of the property.
We are the owners of the property.
Thank you. And can you please describe the purpose of the application?
Well, good evening, everybody. Let me just start by saying that we love this house. I've always been partial to it. And when I say I've always been partial to it, it's because I grew up directly across the street from it. Tremaine and I love this house so much, we bought it twice. The same builder used the same blueprints to build the same house on Oak Knoll Road, which is where we moved from. And we would have stayed there if we had a bigger backyard and were able to expand the house. But we didn't. And as happenstance occurred, we were able to purchase this house, and we're going to be able to make it, we hope, everything that we wanted our other house to be, and live across the street from my parents. So we're looking for an extra bedroom, some more space. We have two kids, but we have a fairly decent sized extended family who we spend quite a bit of time with from house to house. And that's why we'd like to have a bigger dining room and living room. And that's about it. I mean, I can't add too much to what Samantha said. Do you have something to add?
No, we love it so much, and we really want to keep it consistent with the neighborhood, which is why you'll notice the change in the front of the house is really adding a little triangle over the front door so that when you go in the front door, you don't get wet. We had that happen to us a lot at our old house, but really trying to keep it with the same character that we both love.
Yeah, this is the old house. I don't know if you can see it. That's 3 Oak Knoll Road. So
I think you get the idea.
Thank you. Did you have an opportunity to review the administrative comments of the board's professionals and agencies?
yes, we did.
And do you agree with the comments presented subject to your experts' comments?
Yes.
Thank you. You retained the services of an architect and engineer?
Yes.
Thank you. If I may submit Bob Pulowski and Ms. Tremaine Stanley to the board.
Cool. Any questions, Mr. Dow or members of the board for the applicants?
I have one. It's a beautiful street. I was just wondering, and it's a very narrow street. Do you have any, maybe it's the engineer, do you know how the vehicles are going to be parked during construction? Because I somehow, even though your parents live across the street, I'm not sure how much space other vehicles will have.
This is Samantha, if I may. I believe that's something that Mr. Clark will go through.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Mr. Dower, you can just shake your head no if you have any questions. So, okay. Thank you for hopping off before. Excellent. Then Ms. Alfonso, we can proceed to your next witness.
Thank you. Mr. Andrew Clark, if he could be sworn in to give testimony.
And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Andrew Clark, Clarke.
Thank you. And can you briefly describe your background and give 3 boards that you've appeared before recently, aside from Summit?
Sure. I'm a licensed civil engineer, professional engineer, and land surveyor in the state of New Jersey with my license in good standing. I hold bachelor's degrees in civil engineering and land surveying. I have been practicing my own practice, my own company since 2007. I have most recently and frequently appeared in front of Madison, Planning Board, Zoning Board, Florham Park, Chatham Borough, and Chatham Township, aside from Summit.
Thank you. Any questions from the boards? Would you like to accept his credentials at this point?
We'll accept Mr. Clark's credential. I feel like you were here fairly recently, Mr.
It
Clark.
does. I think it was. I think it was the last meeting, actually. Yeah.
Okay, there you are. Welcome back. You
Thank
may
you.
proceed, Ms. Alfonso.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Clark. I will let you, Mr. Clark, go through the comments and your presentation unless you have any specific.
No, so I can jump right in. If I'm going to share my screen for a moment. So I think you can see this. This is the exhibit. This is the plan that was submitted with the documentation. So this is within the package that you all should have. I just wanted to quickly highlight the area that was discussed by Samantha was this area that it's kind of hard to see on the plan, but it comes there and it comes straight down to the point. And then this area in here is subject of a deed with some reservations for the neighbor, the owner of Lot 7, to continue. Well, the owner of Lot 7 owned this property and then sold it to the applicants, and then retained some rights in that area for gardening and passive outdoor recreation until such time as they sell the property, and then those rights would extinguish. But not knowing when that would be, we prepared the design respecting that area so that could be maintained into the future, whenever that may end up. So that relates also to the garage positioning, which was a subject of commentary from both Mr. Linson and Mr. Dower in terms of whether or not this garage could be moved forward, both away from these 2 trees and also out of the steep slope area to eliminate the disturbance in this rear section of the steep slopes. And that all connects together, because in order to move out of the steep slope area, the garage would have to come about to here. And then there's no functional space left in front of the garage to actually maneuver in and out of the garage while still respecting that reservation area. I'm not sure how to actually erase those lines, so they'll just have to be there. The site, as was described, the primary addition is in the rear of the property with a patio and a connecting walk to the driveway, and a new front walk, and the new overhanging section of it's like a portico in the front of the dwelling. We're proposing a dry well that's right in this location. There was some discussion in Mr. Dower's comments about that, which I'll touch on when I go over his comments. But that dry well is intended to capture this entire roof area and manage that in the dry well. So it's about 3,000 square feet in total of the roof area, including the addition, the existing roof, and the roof overhang in the front that's proposed. The comments that were received, I can address Mr. Dower's letter, which was dated January 21st. The vast majority of the comments we take no issue with at all. Comment number 4 I just covered about the reservation. There's the question on number 7, his comment number 7 was with regards to the positioning of this dry well. And the question was whether or not this could be done in a way to be at least 10 feet away from the neighboring property line and the dwelling. The short answer is it could be, but it's probably not the best way to position that dry well. If we did that, 10 feet from the dwelling and the boundary would move the dry well more into this location where we're actually trying to minimize the disturbance in the steep slope area. Normally, I would keep this at least 10 feet away from the boundary, the adjacent boundary. But for those reasons, to try to maintain that slope as much as possible in the front, I have it a little bit closer to the boundary than I normally would. I don't see that as problematic in this case, as the neighboring dwelling is far enough away and uphill from this location. So there should be no adverse impact from the placement of the dry well being closer than 10 feet to that boundary. Another comment related to the stormwater management was with regards to the driveway. Number 8 was asking about the slope of the driveway. And that's a good point. There is a stretch of the driveway, the first approximately 25 feet coming off the road, that is a little bit more than 10%. And your ordinance specifies that 10% is the maximum pitch on the driveway. So I'm not sure if that requires variance relief. It's essentially the existing condition that's there now. And I minimize it as much as possible. So it's the first 25 feet is a little bit more than 10% in slope. That question about the driveway also asked whether or not a trench drain could be installed at the base of the driveway. It can be, but unlike the comment suggestion, I don't think it's a good idea to try to bring that back to this dry well. What I would suggest instead is a second dry well that's exclusively for the driveway to pick up the runoff from the driveway and the trench drain, and then install a second dry well towards the end of that driveway, proximate to the trench drain, for the purposes of just managing the driveway water. What that would do is change this disturbance limit, and there'd be a little bit more disturbance in here. I don't have an exact number for that. I think that's something I'd have to calculate and provide. But it would be a little bit more disturbance than what we have, probably closer to 1,000 square feet than 600 square feet. But we would have no problem doing that to satisfy the comment number 8. And the other item related to that and the driveway is to confirm whether or not the curb cut and the driveway width comply. The driveway width is in the same area, a little bit more than 12 feet in there, but it is because we're following the same curb cut, the existing curb cut. Again, I don't know if that's considered an existing non-conforming condition or whether it's better to recognize that as a variance. But that is the condition at the end of the driveway, the very beginning of the driveway there.
So just maybe to pause for a moment, Mr. Clark,
Sure,
sorry.
yeah, let's take a breath.
This is Samantha. If I may, I think the applicants would like to request those 2 variances for the portion of the driveway that is over 10% change in grade, and then the portion of the driveway that is over 12 feet in width.
Yeah, that would be the conservative approach. You know, that would be the best way probably to handle it.
Do we know what the percentage is on that slope of the driveway where it exceeds 10%?
It's approximately 13 to 14%.
Okay. And then the other things that I would just tap the brakes on a little bit here is I heard 2 potential conditions. And so lastly, and the easiest one was the landscaping plan, for which I hope Ms. Alfonso, the applicant, wouldn't object to the submission of a landscaping plan subject to review and approval by our forester.
We do request that.
Okay. And then the second condition that I heard, or at least that I heard, was around the inclusion of that second dry well. And my thought with that, and I welcome Mr. Dower's input, of course, Ms. Alfonso, Mr. Clark, is it sounds like we may want to include a condition, submission and approval of a stormwater management plan that can address the location and sizing of particularly this new addition that I'm not sure we can finalize this evening. Mr. Dower, if you want to chime in on this.
I totally agree with Mr. Chairman. That would be the best way to approach it, would be to have Mr. Clark submit a plan to capture that runoff to the city engineer for approval.
Okay. It sounds like a great idea. I just don't think we're going to get to the hard numbers tonight. So does that make sense to you, Ms. Alfonso, as a condition of the
Yes.
application?
Yes, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Andy, you're good? Thumbs up? All right, good.
Actually, let me ask one more question. So the two variances, the one is for the 13 to 14% on the driveway slope. The other one is for the curb cut width, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And
That's right.
what's the request there on the width over the ordinance? I may have missed that part.
I would have to say, hang on.
But just maintaining the existing non-conforming curb cut.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly is what we're doing.
Okay.
You know, if you needed specific numbers, I can provide that.
That's good enough for me.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Thank you, Ms. Alfonso. If you'd like to continue.
Sure. There was one other comment, I think number 11, asking about the ownership of the fences. There's a post and rail fence running on the left side, and then it returns. That would appear to be owned by Lot 1, and the metal fence on the right side returns back to this adjacent dwelling and appears to be owned by Lot 5. So both of those fences are located on the neighboring properties and appear to be owned by the neighbors. There is a fence that runs along the back here that would be our fence. And I think that covers, unless I'm mistaken, Mr. Dower, I think that covers the comments in your memo. I suppose at this point, I'd be willing to take any questions that the board or Mr. Dower or the public may have.
If I may first, Mr. Clark, if you could answer Ms. Newell, Boardman Newell's question regarding the construction. I understand that we're willing to place the construction vehicles on one side of the street.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand the question because I conducted the land survey and, you know, it's certainly tight in there. You know, you can't have another car parked. It can only be on one side, and even that's a little cozy. I would say that in general, this is a problem that confronts every construction project, but this one a little more particularly because of the narrowness of the road. I'm not sure if or how the board might control that in order to stipulate that, you know, you can only use one side. It occurred to me that they could also make some preparation where the detached garage is going to go and provide some on-site staging for some of the vehicles as much as possible on the property itself. That's probably one of the best ideas in terms of how you would manage that. I'm certainly open to any ideas on how to control that, though.
Thank you.
Okay, so I heard some good suggestions from Mr. Clark. Ms. Alfonso, do you have a solution that you want to propose, or should we kind of open it to Mr.
I think
Dower?
if Mr. Dower agrees, I think that the goal here is really for them to deal with this as much on the site as possible. They seem to have a good amount of space between the using the driveway for as much as possible. And as Mr. Clark said, the garage area potentially could be used during the process. I think we'd be willing to say that we're going to try to use the site as much as possible for construction activities to keep it away from the street. But of course, we will likely need some street access, and we'd keep it to one side, of course.
Any suggestions, Mr. Dower, anything that you've seen? This is a tough condition to write. I can see Andy's wheels are spinning there, but
Yeah, I would say, again, hate to defer to the city, and I don't hate to defer to the city engineer's office, but they would probably be the ones that would have the most experience with that type of situation. So they could work with the applicant and the applicant's engineer to come up with a solution.
okay. Yeah, I think I saw some neighbors nodding their head about this issue, and we'll open it to questions in a minute. So I think we should include some condition. I don't know if I'd necessarily subject it to the approval of the city engineer, but to see some kind of plan put in place prior would be important, and in consultation with the immediately adjacent neighbors. That might be a reasonable condition. Andy, any ideas from you? To make all our board professionals work tonight here. Oh, pop off mute.
All right. I think that sounds appropriate. Either probably both submission of a plan as well as conferring with the city engineer. I think would do the job unless anybody else has any particular requests.
No, I think is that we'll work on the wording, Samantha, but does that generally sound acceptable? Preparation of a plan subject to review by the city engineer?
It's something that I'd like to just speak with the applicants about. It's not something that we addressed yet. If I may just take a moment to speak with them privately.
Sure, you may. Yep. Well,
Thank you.
Let's take just maybe a 5-minute recess here. Let Samantha confer with her clients.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, Michelle?
Yep.
All set?
Yep.
All right, welcome back, Ms. Alfonso. What's the word?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicants would agree to a condition of approval to provide a plan to the city engineer. We'd ask, is it okay with the board if that's a written plan, more than a sketch type of site plan? I think it would make more sense, just logistically.
Yeah, I think a written plan would be helpful, not just for the city engineer, but I would also encourage the applicants to perhaps circulate that to the neighbors, solicit their input, which it sounds like because the parents live across the street, they're going to be good neighbors anyhow. But yeah, if you could take that step, that'd be wonderful.
Thank you.
Might I also suggest that we consult the traffic department at the police department? If anybody knows how to handle traffic and parking, they're the ones.
Okay. We can see that they're copied on this as well, that they get some visibility. Sure.
Because if anybody's going to have to enforce it, guess who that is?
Got it. Thanks, Joe. Okay, Miss Alfonso, anything more for Mr. Clark?
Unless the board or public have any questions of him,
Okay.
we're set.
So any questions? Anything further, Mr. Dower?
I'd say the only thing that I see that wasn't covered was about this keeping the silt fence as much out of the steep slopes as possible. And that I think can be done during construction when it's set up. But all the other proposed changes that the comments that we'd made as far as moving the garage, I totally agree with Mr. Clark's response to that as the location of the seepage pit in the front yard. So he's covered everything. So I have no more comments.
Thank you, Mr. Dower. Any questions from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none. Any questions from members of the public? Yep. Hello, Miss Erico.
Well, first of all, it's not 7, it's 5 Crestacre. That is.
No, I indicated it's lot 7, the tax lot.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, that's accurate.
So this is just an opportunity for questions. If you'll state your name and your address just for the
My
record.
name is Catherine Erico and I live at 5 Crestacre Court. I love that house. My only goal when I sold that house was to find someone who loved that house. So I am very, very happy that they are working very hard to maintain the integrity. I do have a question about that. On the plans, it mentions the roof, part of the roof, the existing will stay the same, but shingles to the selection of the owner. So is that not going to be a slate roof or a slate-like roof? I noticed in, I believe it was Chris Nicola's comments that he mentions that a metal roof isn't keeping. I don't know where a metal is. I didn't read that anywhere. And I'm just a little concerned because he went on to say that, you know, the roof has a lot to do with the historical appearance of a home.
Miss Alfonso, I think
Miss-
we're going to hear from an architect. Is that right?
That's right. If I may, we do have an architect here who can speak.
Completely. And in terms of the traffic flow, when we did our addition, people just parked on, all the trucks were on our property as much as possible. So we
Okay.
just managed.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Miss Erico. And we'll give you a chance to ask some more questions of the architect here shortly. Any questions, though, for the engineer, Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Oh, Miss
Can you hear
Wallace?
me?
I can
Yeah,
hear you.
it's
If you could just
Barbara
state your
Wallace.
name and your address,
It's
please.
15 Crestacre Court. I noticed on the engineer's report, number 7, he speaks of a drainage pipe leading from the home is going to be abandoned with the use of the drywall. It is my understanding, and I've spoken to Bob about this, this is not a drainage pipe. This is a sump pump. And if there's a sump pump now, there may well be to need a sump pump in the future. Right now, when there's rain, the water comes out of that white pipe. It flows across the street, and weather like this, it freezes. I'm at the end of the street. I get everybody's water and then some. So I really would hope that they can somehow take care of the basement water with this dry well. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not quite sure how it works, but somehow it will work. Thank you.
Mr. Clark, do you have any comment? Is that in fact drainage from a dry well?
Well, I see pipes in the field sometimes. It's difficult to know where they're coming from and what the origin is, but there are plenty of sump pumps that discharge near the street or towards the street. Sump pumps can be challenging because you don't usually actually want to put them into the dry well for a number of reasons. One of them is if you have an extraordinary rainfall event and your sump pump is working very hard and your dry well is quite full, then the sump pump is pushing against a dry well full of water and it's not actually doing what it's supposed to do, which is get the water out of your basement. So usually the best way to handle it, and some towns actually don't allow you at all to tie into the dry well with sump pumps. Usually the best way to handle that is to discharge it somewhere near the foundation, somewhere near the house itself, to an erosion protection method, a big slate or a riprap area, so that the water can disperse and flow overland. A lot of what you see that's problematic is when the sump pumps discharge directly at the curb line.
Yes.
Because as was just described by Mrs. Wallace, in the winter time, of course, that causes icing. So it's a much better solution to have it discharge, but we could certainly address the discharge of the sump pump in a better way than what's happening now, and as I was just describing. So in a more controlled manner that's closer to the dwelling, gives it a chance to travel through landscaped areas and disperse.
Thank you.
So maybe Ms. Alfonso, how we could address that is just to make reference to this particular drainage pipe in the stormwater management condition, and just have Mr. Clark as part of your overall re-envisioning of the stormwater management controls capture whatever change is appropriate, in consultation with the appropriate experts.
Certainly.
Okay. Any other
Mr.
questions?
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Knight. You'll state your name and your address, please, for the record.
My name is Malcolm Knight, and I live at 2 Crestacre Court, which is sort of kitty corner across from the property that's being discussed tonight. First of all, I want to very heartily endorse the renovation that's being done. I think the character of the street is quite special, and I think what is being proposed really is very consistent and will really improve the architectural ensemble, which is an unusual one in Summit. So I'm very happy with that. I have one question. It's really more about, it's really one more for the city than for this renovation. And that is that the renovation and the other houses on the street would be very much enhanced if the street is completely repaved. And this is something that has been on the agenda for many years, but it seems now that when this other work is being done, this would be the perfect time for the city to do the repaving of the street as well. My understanding is that it is on the schedule for this year.
And Mr. Knight, just to pause you a quick second. This is for questions for the applicant's engineer. There'll be a section for comments if you'd like to provide it. And
okay.
Chris Nicola, who is an employee of the city of Summit, is I'm sure taking copious notes to pass back into the administration.
Okay.
Okay, but if you had any questions for the applicant's engineer,
No,
we
I
just
don't
want to
have
make
any
sure.
questions for the applicants.
Okay, we'll give you an opportunity to continue your thought though
Thank you.
shortly. So thank you, Mr. Knight. Okay, any further questions for the applicant's engineer, Mr. Clark? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Ms. Alfonso, we may proceed to your next witness.
Thank you. If I may ask, Mr. Jordan Rosenberg. Don't see him.
Good evening.
All right.
There you are. I had to find the square.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name.
Jordan Rosenberg, architect, Rosenberg.
And And if you would kindly give us your background, experience, and 3 boards you've recently appeared before aside from Summit.
Certainly. I own and operate an architectural design firm in Ridgewood, New Jersey since 2005. I've been licensed in the state of New Jersey since November 2005, so 16 years. And I've appeared before a number of boards over the years. This would be my first time appearing in Summit.
If you could provide just 3 boards that you have appeared before.
Oh, sure, of course. I didn't hear that part. Ridgewood, New Jersey, Saddle River, Alpine.
Okay. Any questions from the board, or would you like to accept his credentials?
We'll accept Mr. Rosenberg's credentials. Welcome to Summit. We hope it's not your last time here.
Thank you
Mr.
so much.
Rosenberg.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Rosenberg, if you could just describe the architectural style of this home, what the program was for this proposal.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the house, it certainly is a fine example of 1930s Tudor revival style. And the intent of the proposed improvements is to maintain this historic nature of the house, and that all the improvements shall complement the historic nature of the home. As far as that addition on the left and the garage, detached garage at the rear there, they will provide architectural characteristics that are, commensurate with what would be expected of quintessential Tudor historic revival style. As far as the improvements go, the majority of the addition is off to the rear. I would imagine, and I was listening as I was listening to construction commencing and how is this going to be scheduled and the methodology of trucks and deliveries of equipment. And I said to myself, well, with the addition being primarily in the back and the work taking place primarily in the back, a lot of the materials and all the equipment will be stored primarily in the back. And I think that will be very pleasant and less of an obstruction than an addition that would take place right in the front, of course, with the exception of that the cute little portico over the front door and stuff like that that's being improved. Would it be all right if I shared my screen, or
I can.
Samantha, would you like to continue with the questioning?
If you'd like to share, I can switch over.
Well, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Okay. Basically, it's more or less, you can see the addition off the back of the house right here. And essentially, it's just to increase the size of the kitchen, family room, dinette. And over here, this is where the single car garage, the non-conforming front-facing garage currently exists. And it's becoming a little office with a mudroom and a pantry closet. The second floor currently has 4 bedrooms, could be construed as a 5th bedroom up there on the second floor currently, but it's really more of a tangent bedroom where you have to walk through one to get to the other one. And so this is the proposed second floor with 5 bedrooms and the master bedroom suite and the detached garage. The attic plan is considered to be unfinished at this time. It's an unfinished attic plan. It just has a walk-up staircase with an insulated door to protect you as a thermal barrier between the unfinished attic and the staircase. And then you can see in the rear elevation here, the side elevation proposed and essentially the addition off to the front, that the style is trying to maintain the architectural roof with the little bump up at the corners are being maintained to emulate the historic nature of the existing house as it is today. Now,
Mr. Rosenberg, there was a question.
Yes, of course.
Regarding the metal. Could you please explain
certainly,
how the metal and slate work together in these type of Tudor revivals?
Okay, well, standing seam metal roof is typically, from a historic perspective, it's been used sparingly over canopies, bay windows, cupolas, sometimes over little gables. In my experience, It is the bronze tone of the standing seam metal roof does complement the architecture nicely. The reason we are doing a standing seam metal roof in bronze tone over the addition is inspired by the client's request. And so that's why it's being proposed tonight.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to, you can see my screen okay, right? The rendering?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to mention just briefly, if I may, this is the back of the house as it is today. And this is the area this right there.
We could just pause for a quick second,
If
Mr.
we-
Rosenberg.
mhm.
Have these photos been entered into?
No.
No. If this could be labeled Exhibit 2, I believe, A2.
Sure.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
And then when were these photos taken and who took them, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. I took these photos, must have been about 7 months ago when I first began, 8 months ago, 7 months ago, when I first began the project documenting the existing conditions.
Okay, thanks.
Can
You're
you also
welcome.
submit electronic files for the file as well?
Yes, I could email those.
Thank you.
I wanted to point out that that the house, that all the houses on the block that have this characteristics of historic Tudor have these steep roof pitches, and that's really what gives it that beautiful historic Tudor look. But there's an oddity going on with this existing house, and it's this bedroom over this existing garage, which has a very shallow flat roof, and it just feels out of place with the existing house. So it's almost like an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, because this element gets to be demolished, and as a result, we get to put in its place, of course, this addition right here. Now, I think you might be able to see that this gable, or this double gable, is matching the pitch of the existing gable here, the style of the rusticated wood clapboard up at the peaks and the white stucco. There is a dormer right here made out of that same rustic wood siding that matches the wood siding element over here on the right wing of the house. So it kind of balances it. And then of course the garage brings in all the same elements that the existing house has. And what I love most about this is that we are eliminating that non-conforming garage facing the street and pushing it back there like that, just to give the overall sense of the house a more historic feel, because really when historic homes were first invented, it was well before garages and cars were invented.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. If I may ask that he be submitted to the board for any questions.
Sure. First, any questions from Mr. Dower for the architect?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then I'll open it to the board, and I'm looking at Ms. Toth. This screams out historic preservation, and I know this is a bit of a pet of yours here. So,
Well,
any questions for you, Ms. Toth?
It is. I really don't. The questions I had have been answered in previous testimony, but thank you very much, Mr. Spur.
You're welcome. Mr. Lickitz, any opinion or perspective on perhaps any of the staff or board commentary? Anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I think all my questions have also been answered.
Okay, wonderful. Any other board questions from the board for the applicant, or the applicant's architect, I should say? Okay, quiet group. Any questions? And this may be an opportunity for you, Miss Erica, to hop off again. Any questions for the architect, the applicant's architect here? Just questions, please.
Yeah. So the existing.
Sorry, would you just state your name and your address again? Sorry, just for the record. Thank you.
Catherine Erico, 5 Crestacre Court. So the existing roof, as it says on the drawings, the existing roof is remaining, but then it says shingles to be chosen by owner. Could you
Yes.
explain that?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Miss Erico. At the time of the site visit, we noticed that the existing house has a slate roof, but it's a bit old. And in the rare case that it did have to be replaced, or the general contractor determined that it has met its life expectancy, it would be replaced. However, the exact materials have not yet been purchased, so they may be subject to change. The intent is that the roof materials will be substantially similar as that which is shown on the plan in the exhibits. So
So something like an imitation slate or a composite, like a Da Vinci or something like that.
that's absolutely going to be contemplated as a possibility. yeah,
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Any other questions for the applicant's architect from the public? Okay. Excellent. All right, Ms. Alfonso, I'll return it back to you.
Thank you. That concludes our presentation unless the board or any members of the public have further questions of us. Thank you.
And I will pause. I know, Ms. Erica, I think you wanted to jump back in. We'll offer the public the opportunity to offer any commentary, public or negative, with respect to the application and the testimony you've heard this evening. You'll need to be sworn in to provide this testimony. So, Ms. Erica, do you want to hop on?
Wait a minute, I don't understand. Catherine Eric, 05 Crest Acre Point. I don't understand sworn in as testimony.
You'll be
Questions?
if you have additional questions, Ms. Alfonso would be happy to take those, or we're offering you the opportunity now to offer any opinion on the application.
And the opinion, I need to be sworn in?
We'd like you sworn in, yes.
Okay.
Andy?
Could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you've done it before, but please once again state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Catherine, Catherine, Erico, Errico.
Thank you.
So as owner of 5 Crest Acre Court, and with them, the owners of 3 Crest Acre requesting the deviation of the zoning, I would like to be specific, I would like to work with the forester or the engineer or whoever that would be of what landscaping was going to occur along the easement area to protect my privacy and to not be looking at just pavement as it goes all the way up. So what I was suggesting is some sort of arborvitae or something along those lines, where as you come around where the driveway widens out, follow the easement line to the oak tree. The rest is such a small area. Those little tiny bushes that I have are soft enough for me, but that one area where it's going to open up to this big driveway that used to be all green with no kind of privacy bar, I would like to be able to put it that I could work with I don't know whether that's the town engineer that would be involved in that or the forester, John Linzer.
So, yep, to complete that
If I
thought,
may,
please, Ms. Alfonso, yep.
this is Samantha. If I may, that's really a title question that would require a different process before a different agency to change the reservation of rights, the deed that you have.
I don't.
I understand. I'm sorry.
I'm talking about what landscaping will go in there from where on the diagram as the.
I can pull it up if that's helpful.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
So as you follow up from where the driveway is and it curves around from the top where it curves to where it's double to where it comes down to match the oak tree is down a little bit further. The existing oak tree is, I don't know, it's right about there somewhere. That area, I would like to work with as to what kind of planting is going to go in there, just to soften. They've got 2 teenagers. Teenagers are going to have friends. That's the way it's supposed to be. It has to be lived like that. But I just would like it softened so that I'm not looking at a parking lot all the time.
Sure. This area, however, is the area of the reservation of rights, the deed restricted area, right? Where you as owner of lot 7 have the right to use this whole portion, right, for gardening and passive recreation activities. So there's really no room there to provide any landscaping on
See,
the
I was
part of the
confused.
applicants.
I was confused. I thought that that first line that came across was it, and that was all there. Okay. All right.
So it's really, it starts here. This is the only
So-
area.
So then all the more reason then, if that's the case, then what would I do to make that? Because I don't have any problem with any of this. I think the house looks lovely. I think that it's going to meet their needs. I'm very excited about that. I'm looking forward to it being finished rather than all the stuff that goes in between. But my big concern is that when I go to sell this house, the reason that we had made that easement to begin with was to prevent a driveway being rammed right up against it. So I'm concerned it being just a temporary, unfortunately, it's now temporary because that's what they wanted to buy the house, but I didn't realize that they would be changing the zoning of it. What would be involved for me to put that as permanent then? So I still have resale value to protect the resale value of my house.
That's something, if I may, that you'd want to speak with. You and the applicants would need to come to a different agreement in terms of that reservation of rights area.
Well, that's a real concern for me. It's a real concern because it was one thing to hear that there was going to be a garage there, but now to see
Ms.
this.
Errico?
Yes.
If I may, the applicants are, happy to have that reservation of rights area. They're happy to continue to allow your gardening and passive activities in that area. They really worked hard to make this application work and their driveway work to ensure that area would remain there for your use for the life of your occupancy and ownership of your home. And I understand,
And I understand that. But what I'm saying to you is that when I move, anyone was going to look at this and say, well, they can just take this away. They can just do whatever they want there. They could put a garden shed there.
Yeah, and Ms. Erica, we can just pause
I
for a second,
understand.
just because I think, Ms. Alfonso, I don't want to confuse the board. There's this separate arrangement that, of course, impacts this application. Is there anything preventing the applicant and Ms. Erico from reaching a separate conclusion, a separate decision about the usage of that space, independent of this
That's something
application?
that could be discussed, but it's not something that we would want to deal with in terms with this application. This application has been really designed to stay away from that easement, that deed restricted area on purpose, to allow that area to continue to be used by the neighbor. And I believe that they would rather deal with that separately. It's a separate matter.
And I would suggest it is not something that the board should consider even imposing. The current easement area is what it is. If they're complying with it as is, like Ms. Alfonso said, if a separate agreement is reached, that's fine, but the application can stand with the area as currently proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Erico, any other comments from members of the public? Mr. Knight, if you'd like to continue your thought from before, or if there's anyone else that'd like to make a comment from the public.
Yes, Malcolm Knight again, 2 Crestacre Court. Thank you. I'm sorry that I came in at the wrong time, but I would like to ask, because it also relates to traffic.
All right, Mr. Knight, I think, Andy, you're going to swear Mr. Knight in? Sorry.
Is this a question or is this commentary?
It's a
Mr. Knight?
question. It's a question.
Okay, you can ask your question then. Sure, Mr. Knight, go ahead.
My question is, will the city coordinate with the applicants and with the construction of the renovation to do the repaving of the road at a time this summer or this year that coordinates with the work that they're doing on their renovation?
So this board does not decide paving schedules by the city administration. I don't know, Mr. Ball, if you want to add anything further.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have jurisdiction over the city, and they will do what they're going to do as far as paving whenever that's contracted out or scheduled. But I think, as Chairman Spur noted previously, Chris is taking plenty of notes, and Chris is in frequent contact with those in the city, and he can pass that indication along, that request along, that they take a look and consider doing it at the same time. There's just nothing we can do to either guarantee or impose that as a condition of this application.
May I ask who I can find out what the progress is on that from?
Who should they talk to, Chris?
They should reach out to the city engineering division, and they usually have a list as to when the projects are going to be done. Usually an estimation, depends on weather, a lot of other factors, but that's who I would recommend to reach out to.
And the acting director is Aaron Schrager now, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So you can look him up in the city directory. Aaron Schrager is the acting director for the engineering department.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments from members of the public for this application? You have a very lively neighborhood you're building in there, Pawlowski, so we wish you well. But Ms. Alfonso, anything you'd like to say in conclusion for the application?
I think we have covered everything. I really appreciate the board's time. Thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. All right, Mr. Ball, sorry, I keep looking around my screen for you. What conditions did we end up with here?
All right, so I've got 4 of them. First, as usual, compliance with the conditions noted in the engineer's report. Second is that a landscape plan shall be submitted to address the tree removal, shall be submitted to the city forester for review and approval. Third is that the applicant shall submit a drainage plan to the city engineer for review and approval. And fourth is that the applicant shall submit a written plan and confer with the city engineer and police department regarding traffic and the location of vehicles during construction. The plan will also be circulated to the neighbors.
Okay. Wonderful. Who would like to begin deliberations? Not all at once. Claire, come on, I see you smirking there. Do you want to give it a shot? Gave yourself away.
Well, okay, I'll take a shot at it. This is a very unique neighborhood, a very unique street, very unique house, and they spent a lot of time and effort to make it work. They have a very interesting legal issue on the side with a neighbor that they seem to be willing to work with, who is supportive of them. None of the requests that they're making are overly onerous. So I really don't have a problem supporting this application and hope that it moves forward.
Any other members of the board like to add some comments? Claire, go ahead. I think you're ready for it.
I was going to say, and sort of along these lines, they've got a lot of challenges on this property, on this street. And I think within the envelope, they've got Pawlowski Stanleys have a plan that's going to work for them and for their neighbors.
Any other comments from the board? Scott?
I think tutors are notoriously difficult to replan and modernize, and I think the architect's done a great job of turning an older building with a bygone footprint into something modern and usable. So I commend them on that and making it work. I would say maybe 5 years ago, if we were talking about standing seam metal roof on a Tudor, we'd have a big problem with it, but it's actually becoming much more commonplace, and it's a much better roofing system than slate in terms of maintenance and waterproofing. So from that standpoint, it looks like it's the right color, it's the right scale, the right fit. It's a secondary roof system behind the slate. I don't think it's competing. So I think from a design standpoint, they've really hit the mark, and I am supportive of this project.
Great, wonderful. And I would just add to that as well. the conditions that have been included in the application, landscaping notably, and especially drainage, should yield a net benefit to the neighboring properties and the broader city of Summit. And for that reason, those reasons too, I would add my support to the application. And would
Steve,
entertain.
Steve, did we
Yes,
retain drainage control for 2 years?
I think that's in the language, Andy.
I didn't hear him say it when he
was
redid them.
not specifically noted, but we can add that in as a
I just-
condition. I know we did impose the drainage plan, but if you'd like to add drainage jurisdiction for 2 years as well.
I would. Any objection, Ms. Alfonso? It's pretty standard language.
That's correct.
Okay,
We're fine.
great. Thanks, Joe.
That'll be the
Okay.
fifth condition.
All right. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I will so move.
Second?
Second.
Oh, Diana got in there. Good job, Diana. All right, Chris?
Sure. Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
He's muted again.
Go on, Mr. Malay. Oh,
Okay, yes. Sorry about that.
there we go. Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Ms. Sager,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
yes. All right. Congratulations.
very much.
Trustee Stanleys. Thank you, Ms. Alfonso.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. All right,
Good.
board members, hang
Thank
in there.
you.
We've got some administrative issues to attend to.
Okay, we have 3 resolutions to approve. First is 19 Bedell Avenue, application ZB 20-2030. Eligible voting members are Mr. Yuko, Mr. Steiner, Mr. Malay, Mr. Loikitz, Ms. Toth, and Vice Chairwoman Newell. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll just note that Mr. Yuko has rejoined the board. Thank you, real quick.
Thanks, Steve.
Motion to approve.
A second.
Second.
Mr. Loikitz, a second.
Okay, Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
and Vice Chairwoman Newell.
Yes.
Right, next resolution is 33 Aubrey Street, application ZB-20-2032. Eligible voting members are Vice Chairwoman Newell, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Steiner, Mr. Malay, Mr. Loikitz, and Chairman Spur. We need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes.
All right, and our last resolution is 66 Fernwood Road, application ZB-20-2033. Eligible voting members are Vice Chairwoman Newell, Mr. Yuko, Mr. Malay, Mr. Loikitz, Ms. Toth, and Chairman Spur.
So moved.
Second.
Who seconded? I didn't see.
Scott.
Yeah,
Mr.
thank you.
Loikitz.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes.
And we have a set of minutes from January 6th, our reorg meeting to approve. Would somebody like to move those?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And seeing none.
All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Happy snow day.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good night.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.